It's really good to be back at AMO. This is something that before COVID I used to come to all the time and really enjoyed having a chance to meet everybody. And it's just really wonderful to be with people again. And I don't mean to get us off on a down note, but Minister Clark seems to have established the precedent here of announcing a bit of sad news before we start. So I wanted to do that too, because I just found out last night that Bill Murdoch just died. And that is a name that, from your reaction, I think will be known to many of you in this room. Bill was an MPP at Queen's Park for 20 years, a progressive conservative from the Owen Sound area, and oh my goodness, if you look up Maverick in the dictionary, his picture would have been there, right? Bill marched to the beat of his own drummer, and I remember back in 2002 when Mike Harris stepped down and there was a PC leadership to replace him, and Ernie Eves, I think at the time, had probably 3/4 of the caucus on side, and a guy named Chris Stockwell was running for the leadership as well. And I remember interviewing Chris and saying to him, okay, Ernie Eves has got 40, 45 caucus members supporting him. You got Bill Murdoch. I mean, this is not going to be a fair fight, right? And he said, oh no, if I've got Bill and he's got 40, this is definitely a fair fight. That was Bill Murdoch. Let me also, because in years past when I've come to this thing, one of the guys that I always looked out for that I wanted to touch base with was the guy who was the mayor from where I've got a camp on Manitoulin Island in Billings Township, and his name was Austin Hunt. And Austin was, if you can imagine this, the mayor of Billings Township, the Reeve originally, of course, from I think 1950 until 2018. He was in his early 90s when he stepped down. I know he and Hazel were going for the record. And Ozzy decided not to run again in 2018. I always used to see him up there, and then we'd see each other here at AMO, and we have a good yuck about it. Last November, Oz died at 95. Great life, great run. I will miss not seeing him here this year. His tradition of public service is being continued by his son, Michael, who's been on council in Billings for the last almost 4 years now. And anyway, I just wanted his name to be mentioned this year as well, Austin Hunt. And with that, what do you say we get the show on the road? We have three superstars who are going to talk to us this morning for the next little while about some of the hugest challenges that you all know all too well and that they are dealing with in their lives as well. So, can I welcome out, first of all, the Senior Director of Policy and Innovation at the Smart Prosperity Institute. Here's Mike Moffatt. Hello, Mike. There you go. Far chair for Mike. Can we welcome the Atkinson Fellow on the Future of Workers? Here's Armine Yalnizyan. Armine, good morning. Right here. And I think all of you will know who the Minister of Finance is for the province of Ontario, who's joining us via video from the capital city, Peter Bethlenfalvy. Now that's interesting. Armine applauded louder than all of you did for the Minister of Finance. I don't know what that means, Minister, but we'll find out. We'll find out. I want to start by asking each of you a pretty basic question. There are huge challenges going on right now in this province and country, and I want to know what keeps you up at night. Treasurer, why don't you start out? What keeps you up at night?
Well, thank you, Steve. And first off, I just want to say my sympathies as well to the families of Bill Murdoch and Austin Hunt. You know, any time anyone puts their name forward for public service, I have a great admiration to them and to their families who support them. So thank you for mentioning them. And thank you to AMO for running, as you said, Steve, another great conference in person. I'm back at Queen's Park now, having spent 2.5 days in Ottawa because I've got to get that budget that we retabled last week through. So I wish I could be with you, but I'm here. Look, you know, what keeps me up at night? I want to tell you up front that, you know, I sleep like a baby, which is the good news. The bad news is I wake up every 2 hours and I cry. So, you know, but seriously, there are some things that are on our radar. First and foremost, without question, is the economic uncertainty that we're that we're witnessing now, whether it's geopolitical. I mean, when we did our budget when we first tabled it April 28th, we locked the numbers before the Russia invasion of the Ukraine. You don't know what's around the corner, so that's something we have to watch, and we have a plan in place to mitigate whatever's around the corner, and we obviously ran on that plan in the budget. And I have confidence not only in the people of Ontario, but the businesses of Ontario, and we're going to weather whatever lies ahead. And we've got the tools and resources to do that. The second area that I think about, and I do want to also applaud Armine, because she's a very thoughtful person, thinks about things not just in the short run, but the long run. And our aging population is absolutely something that I've been concerned about for some time. I gave remarks at the C.D. Howe Institute in 2010 on just this topic, the aging population, and what that meant for our healthcare system, what that meant for labor shortages, what that meant for economic growth, what that meant for healthcare. These issues, it's just math, it's not really ideology, but we need to have solutions in place, and that's why I'm looking forward to this discussion today to talk about that. And of course, I can't go without saying the fiscal situation. You know, we've another reason I got into politics wasn't just the aging population and the economy. It was to be able to balance the needs of investing for the future while at the same time being prudent and responsible. You know, the debt that we put on now is going to be paid by future generations. So we have to think very carefully about the type of spending, the types of investments that we make. We're putting a record amount in infrastructure, almost 160 billion. Our program expenditures to invest in our healthcare and education are historic and unprecedented. But I have to balance that as well with being financially responsible so that we can weather future storms, be they an economic storm, a financial storm like 2009, 2008, 2009, or like a pandemic or whatever else might be around the corner. So those are the types of things I think a lot about.
Okay, Finance Minister, thank you. Armine, why don't you pick up on that? What keeps you up at night?
I wonder if the Finance Minister is going to call me when he wakes up every 2 hours. I'm waiting for that call, Minister, because I actually really admire what you are doing, and I just want to extend your point to everybody that is here. People that run for political office to serve our population in any way deserve to be saluted. It is a thankless job. It is a very difficult job, and we need you more than ever. So thank you very much for what you are doing, Minister, but also thank you, all of you in this room that have got your bulletproof vests on and trying to deal with the challenges that are coming at you fast and furious. You know, population aging is the slowest moving train on the planet. I've been talking about it since I learned about it as a graduate student from the master of demographics, David Foote, the author of Boom, Bust, and Echo. And it has just been imponderable to me that we haven't done more forward thinking. What keeps me up at night right now is this extremely difficult challenge between rising costs because of what's happening to inflation and the fact that our healthcare systems are in collapse right now as we're speaking. This isn't about forward planning. We are in a perma-crisis, and it means not only the quality of our life, but life and death is on the line. There are lots of things we can talk about, but right now I'm worried that the fall is going to mean more people are going to be hungry, more people are going to be worried about having to leave their homes that are not, there's nothing more affordable out there right now, and that more people are going to get sicker quicker at a time when the system cannot support more illness, and we don't have a plan. I don't want to talk about money until we talk about what our plan is to get out of this situation.
Mike Moffatt.
Well, again, I would echo Armine's comments about, just thank you those who, put their name on the ballots and for a thankless job where you have to listen to loudmouths telling you what to do. So let me tell you what to do. So there's a couple things that we think of. So I'm the Senior Director of the Smart Prosperity Institute, and a lot of our work at SPI is around the climate crisis. A lot of my personal work is around the housing crisis. So these are the two things that kind of keep me up at night. And I think we're obviously aware of both, but they also intersect with each other in some important ways. So I worry about flood risk. The climate change issue. We're going to see increased rainfalls in part of Ontario. We're losing some of the land right now, the wetlands that soak up some of that water. So there's a real risk of increased flooding. Essex County is one big area. Second one is loss of farmland. We're going to need to feed a hungry planet, and yet obviously we're losing 300 acres of farmland a day to housing development. And the third one is climate refugees. And I don't see this as being, I think it's a really important topic, but one I don't see discussed a lot by any levels of government. We know that larger parts of the planet are becoming uninhabitable, and people are looking for areas to live that have decent climate and a lot of fresh water. The Great Lakes may be the most attractive place on the planet to be in the next 30 years. So, we need to be prepared for that. And that's both a threat and an opportunity. I think if we play this right, that gives us an opportunity to be, one of the fastest, most productive growing places on the planet, but we need to be prepared for those long-term sort of glacial challenges.
Okay, thank you three for sort of setting the table for the discussion to come. And let's dive a little deeper now. And Armine, I'll start with you on this. I suspect everybody in this room at some point has said to themselves, the demand for local services has never been more intense, and my access to revenue streams to pay for all of these things has never been more difficult. Give us some ideas. How do we make those two lines even out more?
One of the phrases that we've heard over and over again during the COVID pandemic is governments saying we've got your back. This is not a local problem. This is a global problem, and we need the provincial government to have our municipalities back. I fully respect the challenging job the finance minister has to balance future investments with current needs and also keep life manageable for people paying taxes. But I don't think the province is doing enough of a job to make sure the basics are there, and it isn't up to municipalities to make sure the basics are there.
So what does that involve? If he's not, the fellow on that screen, if he's not doing enough, give him some advice about what he should be doing.
I believe that you should be doubling down. First of all, this isn't just about expenditures, Finance Minister. It is about having a very clear plan about how you are going to fix the problems that we are facing, whether it is housing and climate change, whether it is healthcare, whether it is transportation. All of these things are nested, and people don't live in boxes that are defined by your municipal, the edges of your boundaries. People move around, and we want people to move around to take advantage of the enormous opportunity that exists in Ontario. I don't know if you know this, but Canada is the 9th largest economy on the surface of the planet, and Ontario is the biggest economic engine of Canada. We can be and do anything we want, but we have to be and want to do more than we're doing.
Mike, what would your advice be on that regard?
We need to fix this housing crisis, and that's an economic issue. There are a couple ways you can raise revenue. Obviously, you can raise taxes, but you can also grow the size of the economy. And we are losing a lot of talent to other parts of Canada and otherwhere because families can't afford to live here. For the first time in my lifetime, we've had more Ontarians move to Quebec than we have Quebecers moving to Ontario. And I've got a lot of gray hair, we haven't seen that since the mid-1970s. So this is a big issue. I am very concerned about our ability to attract and retain talent in this province if we don't deal with this housing crisis. We've got a lot of great investments. Again, I keep mentioning Windsor, but in the Windsor area, the new Stellantis plant, we have a big plan to build EV batteries, assemble cars. I'm not sure who's going to work at those factories. Who can live in these areas on those types of wages when you can go south, you can go east, and you can go west and buy a house for half what it costs here.
Okay, Minister of Finance, you've heard some wisdom from up here. How do you react to what you've heard?
Well, first off, Mike, I too have a lot of gray hair. You just can't see it because it's all in the back. So I think some really good points have been made there. I would say two things. First off, the budget that I tabled really is our plan to build Ontario, and very clearly to rebuild this economy. One of the things that we talk about is the growth of the economy. I agree with Armine, but out of 38 OECD countries, the OECD economists put Canada in terms of growth potential over the next 30 years, number 38 out of 38. We're dead last. So we do have an economic challenge. I agree with Armine that we have all the resources necessary. We just have to work together to get that done. And that leads me to my second point, is that through the pandemic, it's multiple levels of government. It's not just the municipal. You asked about tools for the municipalities. We've given them funding through the Municipal Partnership Fund, which I announced on Friday, stability on that. The Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, which will help, to Mike's point, really do the things for flood mitigation, for repair of infrastructure, for 389 million, 389 municipalities, $1 billion. We doubled it from $1 billion, so now $2 billion, to help with infrastructure to mitigate some of the climate issues, the repair that we need to do, but also COVID supports through the pandemic. We worked with the federal government and the municipal government to kind of deliver those services that they needed in the time of need. So it's on multiple levels that I think working with municipalities, giving them more powers like the strong mayors, so we can build the houses. That's an emerging and critical need that we need to get done. Not just talk about it, we need to get it done. So I think it's not just about what tools can we give municipalities, how can we work together to address these complex challenges that we have in front of us.
Okay, I hear you, but humor me for a second, Minister, and that is for the 442 other municipalities that aren't getting strong mayor systems in place whenever this bill becomes law, are you open to the notion of giving those that want it additional revenue streams to pay for the services that their constituents, many of them, want?
Well, I spent a lot of time listening to municipalities over the last couple of days, and we had a range of discussions, and we're always talking about ways to work together, not least of which is through the municipal fund that we've given them revenue for operating expenses and for infrastructure, for capital. I've got the vacancy tax, which is a number of municipalities have reached out to go forward with as another tool. So we're working together to make sure that we can deliver the types of programs and services, which includes housing, that we need to get done in this province.
I'm not trying to start a fight here between the minister and our friends here on, well, maybe I am a little bit here. I don't know. Let's see. Mike, is that a satisfactory answer to the need?
Well, I think there's a lot more to be done now. I think the province does have a roadmap on housing. I think that the Housing Task Force and their 55 recommendations would be a fantastic start. Some of those have been implemented, but there's a long way to go. But I think it is going to take provincial leadership. The issue, as you mentioned, we have 444 municipalities, and no one single of them can address the housing crisis. And we see this across, the 905, southwestern Ontario, where I'm from, is no municipality can create sort of enough housing to make it affordable, because basically what happens is you just get more families moving in from other parts of the GTA. So it requires provincial leadership to have, sort of across the board minimum standards. Again, the task force said things like duplexes and triplexes as of right, but that's where it has to come from, because there's just, families are mobile, people can move around. So one individual municipality, no matter how well-intentioned, is never going to be able to solve the housing crisis.
Armine, can we talk inflation for a second here?
No, can I raise another issue?
Right on, okay.
I just wanted to point out another absolutely doable thing, which is incomprehensible how the province has decided to handle it. It got $13 billion to provide childcare to Ontario residents. There's money in the bank. We have been talking about how we're going to get more people working in an era of labor shortage. We have been talking about how we support young families. This isn't even provincial taxpayers' money. This is Canadian taxpayers' money that is sitting in the bank and waiting for you folks at the municipalities to come up individually with a way of creating a portal for licensed care providers in your community to put their name forward, to be able to apply for the operating funding so that they can reduce parent fees. This is mind-boggling. Everybody is doing it differently. There is absolutely no provincial guidance as to how to streamline this process. An organization, a nonprofit organization like the YWCA, which operates in almost all of your municipalities, has to do over 400 different applications as of September. This is mind-boggling red tape. I thought this was the government that hated red tape. Where's the streamlining? Where's the ability to access money now when parents need it because of inflation? I am now done. That was my thing on inflation, okay?
Okay. Okay. Can I get an amen for her, please? Right here. There we go. All right. Minister Bethlenfalvy, I know you're not directly responsible for childcare, but do you want to comment on some of the observations just made by Armine?
Well, I love Armine's passion on this, and I know she's been passionate about this. And listen, there's no daylight between Armine and I on this. I mean, we in fact, on this panel, I think a year ago, she was saying, let's get this childcare agreement done, and I was saying we're going to get it done, and we did get it done. A longer-term deal with certainty of funding, incorporating Ontario's unique footprint, but there's no question that this government is very focused on getting it done, working with the municipalities, working with the many childcare providers, and frankly, it's started already and it's happening. We'll have more announcements to make on that, but they're directionally very positive. But listen, you asked about inflation and things like this. Is one component. We also have the childcare tax credit, which is helping low-income families on top of the $10 a day. We also are increasing the minimum wage in just about 60 days, again to $15.50, which is amongst the highest in the country. We've got the low-income family tax credit rebate, which is providing income tax relief to people making up to $50,000. It's going to help 1.1 million people. That's the lowest personal income tax rate for low-income workers in Canada. We reduced the gas tax on July 1st to provide some relief, and we saw the inflation numbers yesterday came down, and Ontario led the way in terms of gas price reductions to provide more relief from the costs for families. We have a host of tax credits, some, as I just mentioned, that have been in place. We doubled it, the child care tax credit, but we're helping seniors age at home with tax credits to give them relief so that they can put the infrastructure in place so they can age at home. That as a seniors tax credit to allow help with funding home care at home. I've put in over $1 billion in the last budget for home and community care, because that's the future, to allow people to age at home longer, where they can be with their loved ones in an environment that they like. We've put money into a jobs training tax credit to help people bridge from the skills of yesterday to the skills of tomorrow that we need. So we're providing relief right across the spectrum. Is there more to do? Always. I mean, we're very humbled by the majority that we've received. We ran on a plan to build Ontario, and we're very focused on getting these things done, of which childcare is an absolutely important part of it.
Okay, Armine, can I ask you about inflation now?
Yeah.
Okay. The people, again, in this room, they don't control the money supply. They don't set interest rates. They don't control the price of gas. Is there anything they can or ought to be doing as it relates to making the ravages of inflation less onerous on their constituents?
What a great question. You know, it's true that you have very few levers available to you right now. And though this finance minister is one of my favorite conservatives, he's either a shapeshifter or he's on the wrong team. I'm not sure which. But whatever it is that's going on, you're not going to get more money from him. So what can you do? I think we have two COVID lessons. The first lesson is that during a period of extreme stress, which we had during the pandemic, municipalities prevented evictions, which in the fall we are going to need, because the rental costs are actually accelerating faster than the only people that are being hurt by the Bank of Canada rising right now are people that have mortgages that are coming up due for renewal. That's a small fraction.
Thanks for reminding me.
37% of Canadians rent their homes. 35% of Canadians don't have a mortgage but own their home. So it's a subset of the rest of the people that are dealing with what's going on, but every renter is looking over its shoulder, his or her shoulder, and wondering, can I afford to live in my home as my food prices continue to rack up. So preventing evictions for a period of time. This is not a new normal. This is just, what are we doing while inflation rates are escalating and we don't have a solution to the affordable housing problem? Because if people can't eat enough and they lose their shelter, there's no place cheaper for them to go to. We have run out of affordable housing. So that's job one, is prevent evictions this fall. You might be able to do something other than what's going to come from the feds, which is a $500 housing benefit, which to my mind, initially when they first came up with it, was not a bad idea at the beginning of the inflation thing. Now it's like an apology for what's happened. It's no solution at all. And if there's anything you can do to help with rent banks or bring your community together to help people that need to be able to stay in their housing. And the last thing I'll mention is transit. Now, people are going to say to me, oh, there's a lot of rural municipalities here. But did you know almost 3/4 of Ontarians live in 8 cities alone in Ontario? And I was really shocked when I saw Germany come up this summer as a post-COVID measure, offering a €9 a month package all summer, June, July, August, to travel anywhere you wanted in Germany. Within a city, between cities, just, we're going to make transit cheap. We should be doing that. We should be making free transit. I know we're having a fight in Ottawa, where we are right now and where I now live. We're having a fight as to whether that is a crazy idea or a good idea. Can I just say it's an enormously good idea? Can we just get the buses running on time again, though? And then make them free.
Mike, inflation, advice.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's not much you can do directly about prices other than, if you're a municipality, lower parking or things like that. But I think the focus could be on having people have to buy fewer things. I live in a walkable neighborhood, so I don't have to drive that much. I don't spend that much on gasoline, so I don't notice as much when it goes up. So are there things that we can do on transit? Looking at areas, food deserts, so people can buy groceries at a much lower price than having to go to convenience stores and that kind of thing. So I think what we need to look at is those issues of how can we get people to be able to buy fewer things, and absolutely that and that plays on both the rural and urban side. That a lot of those food deserts, somewhat ironically, are in rural areas, and as well having better intercity transit, so somebody could drive a little bit, go to a GO station, and then be able to get into the city. So absolutely, I think we need to focus on how to just help families buy fewer things, because that's something you can do. Can't really affect the overall inflation, unless Tiff Macklem's here, but I don't believe he is. There's not much you can do to control prices.
All right, Minister of Finance, a two-part follow-up for you. Number one, advice to this crowd on what they can do about inflation. And number two, how long have you been a shapeshifter?
Never, and I feel very comfortable being a conservative for sure. But we're all talking about shared challenges and how to come up with the solutions, and that's why this is so important to have these discussions. I would just say a couple of things. First off, the building more homes. I mean, there's no question, with 200,000 people coming. I'm the son of refugees. 200,000 people coming to this province every year, and I'd like that number to grow. We need more people. That's part of our labor shortage challenge in all developed countries, to Armine's very first point about aging. We're not alone, so we have to think very hard and strategically about how we can bring more people into this province to be able to grow our economy, not least of which is helping where the federal government can with their immigration nominee program. Of that 200,000, we only get about 5% of the jobs that we need, say, in what we need, like skilled trades, like welders, healthcare, PSWs, nurses. So I think that's one of the things where working together with the municipalities through strong mayors and other mechanisms to make sure when the people come to this great province that they actually can live somewhere. And that's why the $1.5 million target, that's a very ambitious target. Last year, we We saw the province build just over 100,000 new units, which is the highest number in over 30 years. We have a lot to do, so do the math. 100,000 times 10, that's not going to get us to 1.5 million. But I would just want to also comment on, it's great that Mike can walk to get the groceries, and many people can, but you can't reduce transit fees if you don't have transit. We've got to build way more transit in this province. That's why we put over $70 billion into the budget, a record amount of funding for building public transit. By the way, taking cars off the road, reducing emissions. At the same time, there's many parts of the province that these people who are coming to our province are not going to be in a congregate setting. They're going to live in the GTA or parts of this great province, and they're going to have to drive to work. They're going to have to drive their kids to school and move back and forth. And to that, we need to build those highways. But we're doing work on that too, because we're going to be the electric vehicle manufacturing capital of North America. And we're going to combine it with the critical minerals we have in the north, bring prosperity to the north, which will help many of the municipal communities in the north. And of course, the battery plants. And I think Mike was talking about Windsor. Of course, we're going to have the largest investment in Canadian history to manufacture those batteries that will go into those electric vehicles. So there's many things together with municipalities that we can do to grow this economy, make sure we have the infrastructure, and that's our vision for this province.
Armine.
I totally appreciate what the finance minister has just said. I applaud the way the province and the federal government have worked to be able to bring EV manufacturing to the industrial heartland of the country. I think building highways is an incredibly stupid opportunity cost. And I would say that where there are people that don't have access to transit, that's what I acknowledged at the beginning. 25% of Ontarians don't live in the 8 biggest cities, but 75% live in the 8 biggest cities where there is already transit. Expand access to transit, address the climate change issue, make it free, actually help people see that taking transit isn't so bad. And if you make it free, more people will figure out, actually, I can do this just as fast as I could if I was commuting, if the transit is there. That's how the province should be helping spend money. You want to attract people. People aren't going to go, I'm sorry, whoever is here from Moosonee, but people are not as likely to go to Moosonee as they are to one of the big 8 cities when they arrive here. Let's make our big cities people magnets if you want to attract more people. Of course, they have to have some place to live, but that's not the end of quality of life. You need to have a great place to live. And frankly, for all of you in this room, making your community a people magnet is the way you're going to attract more people and address your labor shortages. So anything you can do to make life more affordable and higher quality is the way you're going to attract the growth in population, if that's what you're looking for.
I'm going to put Armine down as an undecided on the 413. Okay. Can I ask you, Mike, about the budget that the Minister of Finance reintroduced very recently? And that is, when you put your numbers out and you think those numbers are solid, but we live in a world of 7 to 8% inflation. Okay. Go.
Yeah, so certainly you need to have bigger uncertainty, error bounds, as scientists might call it, in a time of 7 to 8% inflation. I was happy to see, I never thought I would see chapter 1 of a budget be about electric vehicles. Yeah, that was incredibly cool. But on the 7 to 8% inflation side, I've got to say that 5% for ODSP is not enough. 5% for Ontario Works is not enough. People are getting put out on the street. Many of them with mental health issues. Being out in the street exacerbates that, and those costs end up getting borne by municipalities. And I've seen a number of mayors talk about that. Cam Guthrie in Guelph, I don't know if Cam's here, and others talk. I think this is an important issue, and it's one of these sort of, it's the right thing to do from a humane point of view, but it's also the right thing to do just from a pocketbook issue, that if we can find ways to increase ODSP and OW, get people into housing, the savings that we're going to get on the health side will more than recoup that. So I think, we need to be sure that we're making those investments. And again, it's municipalities that end up paying that cost far too often.
Well, let me follow up with the minister on that. And I know at your news conference, I guess it was last week, you said there's always more to do. And I think everybody in this room understands that. But could you not have done more in this budget than 5% increase in ODSP, given a 7 to 8% inflationary world in which we live?
Look, we saw the inflation number come down yesterday from 8.1 to 7.6. We're not going to stay at high levels forever, but this was an important move to increase it by 5%, and I would add to adjust it to inflation going forward. So that was a big move, but it's not the only thing. There's a suite of services and programs, and I think Mike and Armine would support that. We just don't do cash transfers to the most vulnerable. We have mental health support. So we have programs for vision care, for dental care, for health care for people on disabilities and others, vulnerable Ontarians. We have money aside for a range of other things such as social housing. In fact, we put in the 5th round of social housing funding along with the federal government to provide supportive housing. So there is a range of things that we do to support, and I think we'll continue to look at ways that we can help the most vulnerable. At the same time, we do have a vision for how to build this province to lift everyone up, and that includes rebuilding our economy and supporting workers in this labor shortage environment, providing the skills of tomorrow, and that infrastructure is key. I think we have to acknowledge that. There's a lot of debt put on by the previous government, some $200 billion, but we didn't really build subways, public transit. We didn't really build infrastructure. Definitely a shortage of long-term care facilities. Hospitals, we're building a new one in Windsor. So we have to make the investments today to support people down the road as well. And that's what we're doing, and that will help the most vulnerable in society as well. So it's not just one thing, it's many things, and we're going to continue focusing on getting those things done.
Okay. Mike, let me ask you about a phenomenon that kind of took place around much of this province over the last 2.5 years of COVID-19 that people have been struggling with. And that is, a lot of people have decided they don't want to live in cities anymore, and they have moved to more exurban or rural areas. Can you sort of paint the big picture for us here? What is the significance of that?
Well, I think it's a big one, and we saw this actually prior to COVID, just again with the housing crisis, that we've got families who do this phenomenon called drive until you qualify, which is basically that you've got somebody living in the GTA, can't afford a house there, they get in the car and they drive as far away as they need to go in order to qualify for a mortgage. So we are seeing the number of children who are living in places like St. Mary's, Ontario, where my grandparents are from, living in those types of environments. And it's been, oftentimes it's been a good thing for those communities. They've seen levels of growth. There are a lot of small town and rural schools that have been under the threat of closure for the last 40 years. Now they've got portables because there's so many kids going to them, and this is probably going to continue with the advent from work from home, and you start to wonder, okay, do we have the infrastructure set up in place for that? Are the kids moving to those communities going to be able to do their homework if they don't have broadband? So I think this is an issue, and it's again one of around climate as well. That again, we are losing all of this farmland. We are, having families be forced sometimes to live places that don't have transit and probably will never have transit. So I think it's, important to first of all make sure that we have the services in those communities that people are moving to, but also create the housing in cities, and that way just give people choice. If they want to live downtown in a big city, they can. If they want to live in, my hometown of Whaling Corners, they can do that too. So they have those options. I had to, people who know me know I have to do a Whaling Corners shout out at least once per panel.
Where is that, Mike?
So Whaling Corners is, the Corners refers to, if you look on a county map of Ontario, it's where Perth, Huron, and Middlesex County meet. It's right, little dot there. So it's just outside of Lucan.
There's nobody here from Whaling Corners, is there, besides Mike? No, I can't imagine.
Yeah, my family see me enough, so.
Okay. I want to ask you about the 8 cities. Those 8 cities, many of their downtowns now, I don't want to say they're struggling, but a lot of the people who used to go and work in those tall buildings have decided they don't want to do that anymore, and they are much more content to work from home from maybe smaller communities. Again, can you play that out for us and talk about the implications of people not streaming into downtowns in the way that they used to?
Yeah, that's a great question. And in fact, it's the biggest cities that are seeing the most challenge because of, for example, the financial towers in Toronto and the underground malls where people would eat and shop. They're like vacated now. So lots of bankruptcies. It's interesting how smaller communities sprinkled across Ontario were much more resilient because you had less competition for the retail, less competition for the personal services. There's maybe one barber or maybe 2. And those places remained. They became essential. And so those communities remained relatively robust. And consequently, your property taxes did not crater. You had people using the buildings. I think the bigger cities are really challenged with what to do with their downtown cores. And it's nice that 2 of our big cities are getting extraordinary powers to support the provincial government. But it's unclear how we're going to deal with the property tax problem.
Do you think more cities besides the 2 should get those powers?
I have no idea. I don't understand this play. I mean, I'm an economist. I'm not a politician, as you can tell. So, and never, though I really applaud all of you.
Mike is right. I think the deadline is the 19th, isn't it? Okay. Howard Brown's going to run your campaign. You got 2 days to get your papers in. I hear Howard. Okay, Minister Bethlenfalvy, let me get you on that as well. I mean, before you were in politics, you were a Wall Street/Bay Street guy. You understand the financial district very well. How concerned are you that there is I don't want to call it a hollowing out because that's too strong, but Armine is quite right. There's just not the activity in the big downtowns of this province in the way that there used to be. How worried are you about that?
Well, it's a great question. It's on the wall of worry I have. I worry about everything. That's why I'm the finance minister. I think we've said in conversations with the big city mayors over the past couple of days, they're seeing transit come back in some places, but not to full. Probably Toronto is most challenged in that regard. One of the themes that I hear over and over again is the commute times. Whether it's, there's not enough public transit to get where you're going, or the highways, or there's congestion and gridlock. So we have to solve that problem and that challenge. And that's why we have a plan and a vision to do that. And I think it also depends, on the health and safety. We're not through COVID completely. That's why, as well, in the budget, there's a plan to stay open. The investments in healthcare to make sure we can keep our economy open, that we have the resources, the human resources, the healthcare system, the viability of that in an environment that who knows what's around the corner. So I think we have to tackle these things. I know that Mayor Tory is put on a new committee to look at the issues dealing with bringing people back to the core. It's happening right around the planet. We just have to focus on it here. Tim Hockey is going to be running that, chairing that. He helped me here in Queen's Park to help digitize government, which I'm very passionate about, and modernizing the way we do things in terms of data and embracing technology, not running away from it. So I think there's going to be some really good ideas coming out of the major municipalities on how we can tackle this together. And finally, we've provided, along with the federal government, I took leadership with the other provinces to work with Chrystia Freeland to get transit support in the meantime, because ridership is down, and we've provided support to those big cities as we face these challenges together.
Mike, I want to circle back to something you said earlier about climate change refugees and the notion that they may be in greater numbers coming to our shores in the days, months, years ahead. I know everybody talks about the costs of climate change, but I wonder if we could look at the other side of that coin, which is potential economic opportunities lost if we don't figure out how to deal with that whole thing. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think there are opportunities here that we are, you never want to sort of take advantage of a crisis, but we are where we are. We are on a planet where fresh water is getting ever so much scarce, and we're sitting on the biggest reserve of fresh water in the world. So I think there are things that we can do on that. There are opportunities for us, again, in agriculture, but I worry about how much agricultural land that we're losing, particularly in southwestern Ontario. Obviously, we've seen both the provincial and federal governments make investments into EV manufacturing, and I think there's other areas of sort of clean economy we can look at, from alternative power like wind and solar. I think there's a lot of opportunities on mass build timber for homes. I think we need to look at the building code. Partly, I think we need to look at the building code partly to increase the productivity of building homes. I don't see how we're going to have the labor force to be able to build 1.5 million homes, so we're going to have to figure out how to increase the productivity of a sector. But I also think, allowing for changes in the building code to new materials, I think, are some real opportunities there. But we have to get these things right, and we have to, I think, take them seriously, and just sort of recognize that it's not, whether it be housing or any other issue, it's not, okay, let's just keep doing what we're doing, but more of it. I think we really need to be fundamentally changing how we operate as a province.
Armine, you want to follow on that? You are very honest. I love that about you, I have to say. Good.
I don't have anything to add on climate change.
Mike summed it all up.
Yep.
Okay, Minister, back to you. And here I'm going to beg your indulgence by saying to you ahead of time, please don't give us a lengthy laundry list of the myriad things that you would like to say in answer to this question. Give us what you believe to be the single most important expenditure in your just reintroduced budget that you believe ensures this province's long-term future prosperity.
Infrastructure, be it hospitals, long-term care facilities, highways, public transit, EV manufacturing. By the way, small modular reactors to fuel efficiently the electric vehicles. And it's not just electric vehicles. We want to get everything electrified in this province. And by the way, I know you just asked for one and you didn't want a laundry list of those. But I can't help myself because I'm not an economist, I'm a politician. So what I would say to the climate resilience issue that Mike just addressed, I think that's really important. And that's why we are providing funding to municipalities to deal with their infrastructure, which has a lot to do with water and treatment and infrastructure for flooding and all those types of things, because we do have a deficit and we have to be very mindful of that. And, it goes beyond that, like clean steel, the steel that's going to still go into these electric vehicles. We have to think about that. And that's why, along with the federal government, putting investments in place to greenify, if that's a term, the steel production out of the Hamilton plant for Dofasco and the Algoma plant up in Sault Ste. Marie. So, there's many things that we have to do on the continuum to address the climate action that we so importantly need.
Armine wants to have at you for a second here.
Yeah, just for a second, please, Minister. So I think infrastructure is the job of government, 100%. I'm really surprised that all of the infrastructure you mentioned was physical when we are in the midst of a social infrastructure collapse. All the jobs that you talked about, all the things that you talked about are boy jobs. The girl jobs are under attack. I'm wondering how long you think this economy can function when the social infrastructure isn't there for education, home care, long-term care, hospital care, basic primary care, and there is no plan for dealing with that. How long do you think we're going to go on?
And you've read my budget. You've read my budgets before. We started with the Human Resources Challenge many years ago. So when we say infrastructure, we recognize you have to have the physical infrastructure and you got to put people in it. But let me tell you, if you don't build anything, you don't need people. So
We've
these are
got
the
it
dual
built.
challenges.
I'm sorry,
I talked
Minister,
to-
we've got it built. You can build all the beds you want for long-term care or hospitals, but without staff to staff them, they are just
And
mattresses.
we agree on that. We agree on that. So I don't know why you're saying, you've got to look at the record. We've hired over 10,000 healthcare workers and nurses and personal support workers. I put in the 2020 budget over $5 billion to hire 27,000 personal support workers and nurses for our long-term care facilities. In fact, we built the Ajax Pickering long-term care facility, 320 beds in 13 months, and that's fully staffed. So you have to have the human resources, you have to have the physical infrastructure, and the third pillar that you have to have is the proper oversight and regulatory authorities. We have asked the College of Nurses and the College of Physicians and Surgeons to come back with a plan. It's due this week to bring some of the 26,000 people who are accredited in their home countries to get them online here, nurses, physicians, specialists, personal support workers, into our physical infrastructure. So we've been tackling this on multiple fronts. So it's not fair to say that we're just talking about physical infrastructure. And it's not fair to say, particularly when we're focused on all types of labor, that it's a male or female or a particular area. This is an all-inclusive strategy. It's in the budget. I know you've read the 241 pages, and our labor challenges are addressed in there as well.
I absolutely have read all pages, and I'm sorry that it feels like it's an unfair question to you. And I'm wondering what your plan is to make sure that we don't keep unfairly asking taxpayers to pay 2 times, 3 times, 4 times the wages for a nurse because we can't find a permanent nurse, we have to go to an agency nurse. What is the plan to stop that?
Yeah, and so it's a multiple level plan, and we've got many levels. One is to I know Ontario Health is very much focused on that, working on that. We have agencies that are working on that. We need more nurses. We need more personal support workers. We need more skilled trades. We've got, that's why we're investing so much in these areas, not just the physical infrastructure, but the labor infrastructure, to train people, to bring them to this province, to provide the supports necessary to make sure that they not only get trained, but that we can retain them. And, the point is, Armine, as well, is that we're not an island here in Ontario. We're competing against jurisdictions not only in Canada, but around the developed world for a labor shortage challenge. But it is in the budget. We've been acting on it for years. There's more to do, and we'll continue to work on that.
Mike, a lot to chew on there. You want to come in?
Yeah, well, I think at some point we just, we can talk all we want about inputs, but what are we trying to accomplish, and are things getting better? And I'm going to get really personal here. I've got a 7-year-old with severe autism, nonverbal. We were told 3 years ago that 32,000 kids on a wait list was too many. Now it's over 50,000. So we can talk about all the inputs we want, but at one point, you just ask this sort of famous Reagan question: are things better now than they were 4 years ago? And whether it be on the healthcare side, the Ontario Autism Program side, we're just seeing wait lists get longer and longer and longer. And you got to wonder, okay, at what point does this break? I would argue on the autism side, it's already broken, and my concern is we're seeing more and more of that happening in the healthcare side and on the mental health side.
Can I just do a little follow-up on that, which is to say that probably all of the people in this room, and I bet Minister Bethlenfalvy as well, when they decided originally to stand for office, had no comprehension of what lay ahead for them in terms of what the last 2.5 years have provided. In which case, do we cut these folks a bit of slack given the nature of the world today?
Well,
Just asking.
Yeah, I suppose at some level you have to do that. But it is what it is. Events are always going to happen, and I think we have to have sort of a plan going forward, and we have to have a target. We have to say, okay, this is what things look like. So again, on the housing side, we have a 1.5 million house target. I think that's fantastic. I think that's the right number. We had a piece come out on Monday that said, yeah, actually we think that's there. You have to have both the target and the plan. And on so many of these issues, we've got one or not the other. Sometimes we have a target and no plan, And sometimes we have a plan, but we don't really know what we're trying to accomplish. We don't know what success looks like.
Okay, we've got a little over 5 minutes to go here, and I want to finish up on something a little bit odd. And that is, I've been following politics for a long time, and it feels right now as if there are a lot of people who are deciding that this really is not a sensible way of life for them. Public life, I'm talking about. You look at the capital city alone, how many incumbents are standing down and not running for re-election. You can see that all over the place. Mayor of Ottawa is not running again. There's lots of people who have decided they've had it with the social media harassment. They've had it with, some local politicians are bullying each other. Some are bullying staff. There's a lot of bad behavior out there. Minister Bethlenfalvy, why don't you start us off here? What is going on out there that makes this a very, very bizarre time in terms of offering oneself up for public service?
I think that's a great question. You said we only have 5 minutes, and I only have a fraction of that. So maybe another show on this. I think social media may be part of it. I would say, however, that if I look at Pickering, we have a lot of candidates for mayor, a lot of candidates for each ward and regional councillor. So it's not universal that people aren't putting their name forward. So we're seeing a lot of robust competition in Pickering and in Uxbridge as well. And frankly, right across Durham region. So many are putting their name forward, and I think, I think public service is a noble thing. I'm going to a talk that Prime Minister Brian Mulroney is giving on behalf of Michael Wilson's book that came out posthumously that talks about public service. A book, a guy that was my role model to be in the private sector, but be in the public sector as well. And I think it's a very noble thing to be in public service. And I would encourage many people, youth and others, to be engaged regardless of stripe. It's a absolutely essential part of democracy, and we have to give back. Democracy is not easy. And I really, as I said at the outset, at the beginning, I really applaud people who put their name forward.
Mike, you want to come in on that?
Yeah, well, obviously we have to tackle the social media side and just the abuse, but I think we're going to have to make the difficult political decision, though it might be popular in this room, is we got to raise the wages, particularly on down ballot. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's me playing to the audience. But no, I think it's absolutely true. Like you look at what a school board trustee earns in Toronto. Yeah, there you go. They've essentially become full-time jobs that pay less than minimum wage. So it's like, okay, do you want to earn less than you would earn at McDonald's and also have, all kinds of angry people yelling at you saying how greedy you are because you're working for $12 an hour? It's absolutely ridiculous. We've spent the last 40 years trying to hold down these salaries. And again, I think it's one of these, penny wise, pound foolish things where, I think if we invested in our local and provincial leadership, I think that would more than pay for itself.
Last word to Armine.
Oh, wow. So there are two types of people that run for office: people that want power and people that want to change the world, make the world a better place. And both are finding their goals dashed. People that want power, our finance minister is an excellent example of being one of the most powerful people in Ontario and yet having very little power to shape the world he would like to shape through his budgets. And there are plenty of you, whether you're a school trustee or a local reeve, that are trying to make your community better, and yet the forces seem stacked up against you. You add to that the type of abuse that people are getting, and of course people want to leave. But can I just say part of the power part is, who are you serving? A few years ago in Toronto, we had a question raised by the Toronto Star, Anne Golden, who was at the United Way, and the city of Toronto, talking about inequality and how do we make Toronto a more livable place for everybody. And everybody had their solution on how do you reduce inequality, and the proposal I had was for every elected person, it doesn't matter where you live, you have really poor people that you are supposed to represent as their elected representative. If you go and live in the poorest neighborhood for 1 month, you literally walk in the shoes of the people you are supposed to represent, you will never not get voted in again. People will love you because you have walked with them. This is the lesson of Bob and Doug Ford. People loved them because they hung out in the social housing areas. They actually answered phone calls. They would put like these little fridge magnets on your car saying, call me. Like if you are available to the poorest people in your jurisdiction, people will love you and they will trust you. People don't trust too many publicly elected officials because they perceive them as going into the game for the power, even if that's not true. And can I just say, I know this as an economist, not as a politician, because one year I tried to prove that the Mike Harris cuts to welfare were terrible, and I lived on a welfare budget for all of Lent, which is 47 days, and I never want to do it again. But what I learned about economics from living on a welfare budget taught me more than I have ever learned in school. Try it, you'll like it, and people will like you.
And with that, I know all of you in this room want to join me in thanking our three guests for a spectacular discussion this morning. Thank you very much, you three. That was terrific. Wonderful. Thank you, Minister. We can let you get back to your regularly scheduled programming at the moment. I presume Howard Brown will be over in the corner signing up delegates for Yalnizyan for mayor in some jurisdiction somewhere. And in the meantime, thanks a lot, everybody. Appreciate it.